Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. I have to admit I'm pleasantly surprised. We just did a Antifa finds out in Texas video recently, and I was saying how we've sort of been desensitized to the idea of these Antifa goons on the street simply getting away with their fascist behavior, in many cases their illegal behavior, and the idea was that Antifa gets away with whatever they want in places like Portland, New York City, Los Angeles, Canada, you name it, but in Texas, they don't play by the same rules. In fact, they actually follow the rules known as laws, and Antifa very quickly gets BTFO'd. Well, one of those places that you would probably categorize as extremely left-wing, where Antifa would probably go completely unchecked, well, that place would be the UK, or specifically London. But in this case, that's not what happened at all. To my complete shock, in a very surprising instance, where Antifa goons actually effed around and found out in London, of all places. Well, kind of found out. The more important thing here is giving credit where it's due, and that's to this incredible UK police officer who went against the woke trend in these left-wing cities. You know, he actually did his job. Let me show you guys exactly what I mean by that. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so it's a familiar face. Billboard Chris strikes again. A little bit of a background, Billboard Chris, well, the name kind of says it all. He's simply a man who posts up with a billboard attached to his body, and he basically stands there and has conversations with people and films the whole thing. That's his shtick. He makes a statement with his body billboard, so to speak, usually the same billboard that says children cannot consent to puberty blockers, and his aim is to simply peacefully stand there and have a conversation with people who might disagree with him. He is always peaceful, always cordial, always respectful. He simply stands his ground and attempts to have his voice heard in the public town square in a very literal sense. As we know, however, it's not really that simple in 2023. Leftoids, Antifa fascists, at every opportunity they can get, they turn into damn woke zombies and viciously assault Billboard Chris in public. We've covered many of those encounters. The backstory is important here. I'm trying to build up to get to the clip. The context is really important. Remember that time Billboard Chris was assaulted, I believe in Vancouver, if I'm not mistaken? Let's see if I could play that clip without the video getting dinged. And then, of course, following that event, a police officer who was witness to the attack literally told Billboard Chris that essentially he was asking for it, and therefore she couldn't do anything about it. He was asking for it by simply standing up with a billboard.
It doesn't. These conversations are pointless right now. You're trying to insinuate that was a mutual thing. Like, my gosh, mutual thing. I'd walked away from the crowd 3 times. They kept following me. Then they surrounded me from all sides, started yelling in my ear from inches away, while you all did nothing. And then when I can't even get out of that surrounding and I get punched in the face, I get pulled, you're telling me that's a mutual engagement?
Yes, it is.
Well, this time was a little bit different. Once again, he was attacked by a mob of crazed Antifa lunatics for simply standing around in London, and the police actually did their job. Here was Billboard Chris's encounter once police were dispatched after the assault was seen on CCTV camera. Billboard Chris described this police officer as, quote, the most base police officer I've ever encountered.
Yeah.
I'll borrow you for a moment.
Yeah. Is it all right if I film? I just like
Absolutely, yeah, you're more than welcome to.
Not to harass you or anything, I just...
Another problem in the public
Yeah,
that
yeah.
doesn't need to provide their details to you.
Sure.
Essentially, we've been called today by CCTV as you are potentially a victim in what we would describe as a public order offence.
Yeah.
You're entitled to display any sign which you want, as
Yeah.
long as it doesn't cause harassment, alarm, or distress to people.
Right.
From what I've been told, you have not been doing that. You've merely been engaged in conversation.
Trying, yeah.
To which some people without the intellectual ability that you might have resorted to violence in order to get their message across, because words are clearly not good enough for them.
Right.
In terms of the people, where are they now?
So the woman who vandalized my sign went in that building,
Okay.
and
Do you know
so
what
did the
she
man
looked
who
like?
pushed me into the car. Now, people aren't allowed to stop me from walking, right?
No, they're not.
And they're not allowed to get 6 inches from my face harassing me.
No.
I feel threatened
Yeah, of
when they do
course.
that. So I'm allowed to defend my personal space.
Yeah, you are,
Yeah. So a man who's in that building pushed me into that blue car on the corner, if it's still there.
Do you know what they were wearing and what they look like?
Yeah, I've got them on video.
Okay, can I see the video?
Yeah.
Now that right there is how it should always be handled. From what I've been told, you've not been doing that, you've merely been engaged in conversation to which some people without the intellectual ability that you might have resorted to violence in order to get their message across because words clearly aren't good enough for them. That is a literal, perfect assessment. In fact, that should be the basic legal definition. These Antifa dopes don't possess the intellectual capacity or ability to participate in basic dialogue and discussion, and so a flip is switch, a short fuse, causes some sort of malfunction, and they turn into the typical woke zombie that we've been covering for years. This police officer had working eyeballs and a working brain between those eyeballs and was able to clearly identify that Billboard Chris was the peaceful protester and these leftoid Antifa goons were clearly wrong. The officer then stepped in. This was the very interesting interaction.
Of people trying to go about their normal business, all right?
Hey,
Okay?
this man has been harassing people, pushing that in people's face.
Yeah, I know. I've literally just witnessed him obstructing someone.
That's not a criminal offence, you know it.
No, you're not allowed to obstruct.
Harassment, alarm and distress to anyone by blocking their right of way.
Are you
I
seeing
will
that?
nick
Because
you
I'm
for
pretty
it.
harassed, alarmed and distressed right now.
Okay.
You okay?
To which a leftist activist steps in as the dollar store legal arbiter. Obstructing someone and harassing them in the streets isn't a criminal offense.
Are you sure about that?
She then claims that Billboard Chris was harassing people on the street, that actually he was the one harassing people by carrying a sign. We're witnessing a genius legal mind at work here. Pay attention, folks. Make sure you're writing notes. And then claims, actually, I'm being harassed right now by having this encounter with you, officer. Ah, the typical leftoid Gen Zer. I'm uncomfortable right now because of the mean police officer. I'm being harassed.
I was murdered. You were murdered. Okay.
The officer clearly felt as though he was losing IQ points for every second that he was listening to this woman speak, and so he swiftly backed off and didn't even entertain anything else this genius legal scholar was spouting. But of course, he didn't run away from the situation. He actually did his job. The police maintained their presence and protected Billboard Chris and other individuals from these unhinged leftist lunatic zombies. They did the right thing. Now, I wanted to say that the police were protecting their right to free speech or their right to peacefully protest, but I'm not sure that those rights actually exist in UK law. I mean, definitely not to the same extent as constitutional free speech and freedom to assemble is enshrined for citizens in the American system, but nonetheless, this police officer did the right thing and he gets a 10 out of 10. He didn't come in and smack up these Antifa goons, as much as certain people would have probably enjoyed that. But you know, he did the right thing. He de-escalated the situation. He didn't get caught up in a ridiculous and very useless back and forth with these pseudo-intellectual, fragile Gen Zers. He simply laid down the law, set the standard, and speaking of standard, this should be the standard across the board. Peaceful protest, civil expression, I guess we could call it, should be enshrined, enabled, and defended across the Western world. And these lunatic, leftoid activists should be condemned wholeheartedly and unanimously across the board. We as a society should not tolerate them, and it's not for lack of tolerance. I mean, we've tried. At this point, they're domestic extremists, they're terrorists, and when they cross that line and they harass and assault people for simply having a different political opinion, well, they should be handled accordingly. That's not a crazy idea. That's, again, basic common sense. That's what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. Of course, you know that we'd love to have you here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.